Hello, everyone, and welcome back yet again to another interview here at the Loudini Rock and Roll Circus. Today I am talking with the Reverend Shawn Amos, son of Wally Amos of famous Amos Cookies. Yes, you heard that right. And Shawn attributes his diverse background to growing up in the colorful Hollywood landscape. Now, prior to becoming a blues preacher, Shawn was an A&R executive at Rhino Entertainment and vice president of A&R at Shout Factory, where he produced and recorded multiple Grammy-nominated projects. He produced broadcast, DVD, and audio titles for legacy artists ranging from Hart to Quincy Jones. And then later ran Listen Up Foundation for Quincy Jones. Amos has released 5 albums of music, including his 2014 release, The Reverend Shawn Amos Tells It, a collection of blues originals and covers that received much acclaim from the blues and roots world, and the sophomore blues album, which I'm listening to right now, can't get enough of, The Reverend Shawn Amos Loves You. When not playing blues clubs, Shawn hosts a weekly web series called The Kitchen Table Blues, and I highly recommend that you guys check that out. It is very, very cool. He's also known for his expertise in brand marketing, having founded Vanguard content marketing agency Freshwire. Amos speaks to the need for content mindfulness and authenticity in the 24/7 real-time race for relevancy. Welcome, Reverend Shawn Amos.
Thank you, Lou. Good to be here Sunday morning.
Sunday morning. And wait a minute. Now, I hope I'm not we're not messing you up, because you are actually an ordained reverend, right?
I am. I'm with the Universal Life Church. So the bar might not be as high as being with the Catholic Church, but I'm actually officiating my first wedding in November. I'm actually going to marry off my sister-in-law.
I was just going to ask you that. So if somebody out there is I want a blues man to marry us, they can call you up.
Absolutely. I'm easy to find.
Yes, you're everywhere. And we'll just go ahead and just throw that at the folks right now so they can follow along online. That's ShawnAmos.com, or at Facebook, Reverend Shawn Amos, and Twitter, Shawn Amos. He's got a YouTube channel that's youtube.com/user/Shawn Amos, so you can see all that stuff there. Now let's get into the meat and potatoes. Now, how did you get I didn't read the whole bio because that gives away the whole thing, and then there's no reason to do an interview. How did you get started? You do have some music in your background, so tell us how you got started in music.
Okay, I've been around music my whole life. My father was a music agent back in the '60s over at William Morris, and he booked all the old Motown acts of the day, and Solomon Burke and the Animals, and so it was just a part of my life. I grew up in recording studios and backstages at clubs and concerts. My mother was a nightclub singer who performed under the name Shirl-ee May, and so it's just always been a part of my life. I've always been a fan and a student of music, and music has been the thing above all else. It's just really kept me going and just sort of gave me an anchor in my life. I didn't start playing music myself till relatively late, and it just grew out of writing. I've always been a writer. And as a kid, I wrote poems and short stories, and I went to film school at NYU and was thinking I wanted to get into screenwriting, and actually wrote a few screenplays. And I got introduced to songwriting sort of around college, and I just loved that form of storytelling. And I just love telling a story in a 2 or 3 minute song. And to me, it's the most powerful storytelling there is. And so that was sort of the road I've always been on, and I've written in different genres, and I've released a few albums that were sort of typical folky singer-songwriter kind of albums, and I made a record, actually a tribute album to my mom, which is the last full-length album I made. This album, The Reverend Shawn Amos Loves You, is my first full-length album of original material in 10 years.
Okay.
And so it's been a long while, so I took a bit of a break from writing and recording. I produced some other folks along the way, but it's just the anchor of my life, man. And I feel like when I'm writing, and certainly when I'm singing, that is the most direct path I can get to my head and my heart. Everything else and everywhere else in life, I'm sort of kind of struggling what to say and how to say it, and sort of questioning, my sincerity or my motives. But when I'm in music, it is there's just there's no question. There's no question.
Now you sort of touched on this a little bit. Now you've worn a lot of hats in this business. How is there an adjustment where what do you have to do? Like, how do you get yourself in the mindset to going from like either a producer or an A&R person to being an artist yourself?
Yeah, that's a great question. The challenge for me as an artist has always been to just let the artist lead. I think for anyone who wears multiple hats, or for anyone who is it's just really independent musicians, because we live in a world now where every musician really needs to be his own manager and his own social media person and his own best advocate and be somewhat of a business-minded person to some degree. And I think that maybe some artists even maybe over calibrate in that area. But I think that for me, I'm always having to, when I'm in the moment of playing and singing, the big challenge for me is just to be a player and just be a singer and put all those other hats like outside of the room. And that's tricky sometimes, versus when I'm producing or working with someone else. I think my obligation is to be with them and be of service to them and provide some objectivity and maybe inject a little bit of intellect into their artistry. Does that make sense?
Right.
It's like what part of your brain leads at any given time. And I think that for me, I talked to someone else about this a couple of weeks ago. I think it's every artist's job when they're in the act of creating to just put all those other hats away and just get in tune with the muse. And then once it's done and it's out there, whether it's out there on paper or out there on tape or out there on stage, once it's captured, I guess, and wherever it's captured, then to think about what you do with it. Then think about how you sell it, or think about how you introduce it to people, or think about what kind of package to wrap it up in. But I think if you're thinking about all that stuff while you're making it, then you end up with a piece of product that doesn't move people. I think people are ultimately moved by music that clearly comes from a place of authenticity and comes from the heart.
Well, speaking of authenticity and heart, let's talk a little bit about the latest record. Now, the record is out, right?
No, it's October
not yet.
16th. Yeah, October 16th. So you can pre-order on iTunes, but October 16th is the release date.
Okay, this is really exciting. This record has it's edgy. It's traditional. You're not. It's not like disco blues or something like that. It's got very traditional sort of like anchor to it, but it's still really edgy and it rocks. I'm a rock guy. To hardcore rock guy, and this is just I loved how it was so soulful and so traditional, yet it really rocked. So can you talk a little bit about how Reverend Shawn Amos Loves You is a little bit different than some of the other things you've done?
Yeah, I think it's the second blues album I've made, and the first full length, and the first one of largely original material. There's 12 songs on the album, and 10 of them are originals. And I think when I did the EP, last year, I just really wanted to be a student of the kind of blues that really speaks to me, which is largely Chicago era, post World War II blues. So Elmore James and Muddy and Junior Wells and Howlin' Wolf and the Chess Team. That's really the era of blues that I just find really vibrant and really exciting. And I feel that of all the different strains of blues, that's the one that's kind of been lost the most. That whole scene sort of, evolved into a bit of a horn thing, and it got a little, showboaty in a way, and then, the Texas guitar slinger thing, and the British sort of reinterpretation of blues. I'd say there's a lot of other strains of blues that sort of have endured and sort of captured public fascination more than the Chicago stuff. And I'm on a little bit of a mission to sort of, shed a spotlight on that era again. So that first album was sort of that. It was just a celebration of that kind of music and its little covers. I think for this album, it was really important for me I was writing original material, right? So there's less of a rule book to point to. If I want to cover a Junior Wells song, well, there's lots of recordings to point to, and if I'm going to be reverential, then those are pretty easy decisions to make. But when you have a bunch of new material, where are the guardrails? And I think for me, one of the things I talked about with Mindi Abair, who produced the album for me, was, what if those guys were making an album today? So instead of trying to recreate, some 1960s Chicago vibe, what if those guys were around today and making a record? And what would it sound like with the sensibilities that they have? And so that was sort of, I guess, if any sort of guidepost, it was that one. That we didn't hear anything too slick, because none of those albums that they made were slick by any stretch of the imagination. They're all, there's some warts on those records, and parts weren't played perfectly, and that wasn't the point. It wasn't slick. A lot of blues has gotten really produced and really slick, and really somehow people get obsessed with sort of, perfect execution. And I think it's about, hearing the interplay between people and hearing, maybe a beat get skipped or hearing things rush a little bit in the verse and then dial back. And those dynamics, that push and pull, is part of what's cool about those old records. And so, that was the goal. It's like, let's create an environment where that feels like, a sort of 21st century version, of a Chicago blues, record. And it feels like we got it.
Yeah, mission accomplished for sure. Now, speaking of creating that vibe, now you guys, how did you do this? You guys all played together in a room?
Yeah.
Is this how you did it?
Yeah, we recorded down in Shreveport, Louisiana, at the studio of Brady Blade. Brady's got a studio down there. Brady's a great drummer. Comes from a great drumming family. He's played with Anders Osborne and North Mississippi All Stars, and all the way to on one side, Jamie Lou Harris and Indigo Girls on the other. So he's got a great, and he's from Shreveport, and there's something about the air in Shreveport where people just play in a really, in a really greasy way. And so he and Chris Thomas were on rhythm, and then my longtime guitarist, Dr. Roberts, flew in from LA with me, and then we used a couple different keyboard players. But yeah, everything was live except for horns, which we overdubbed, and except for some background vocals by a local Shreveport singing group called Forever Jones. But everything else was live. And I may have recorded one harmonica overdub, but all the other harmonicas were live. So it was great. So what you hear is what you get. You hear the room, you hear the interplay. There was there wasn't a ton of punching. I don't think we punched much at all.
I have to say that I was surprised to see Mindi Abair's name involved with this. Can you tell us a little bit how she became involved with the project?
Tell me why you were surprised first.
Because I know Mindi. In my mind, Mindi's a totally pop artist. You know what I mean? I don't really think of her as a roots type artist at all. And then when I heard your record, I was like, oh my goodness, this is brilliant. I wonder if it's my record.
Cool. Yeah, that was a calculated risk. So Mindi and I are really good friends. We were both on the Grammy board together in Los Angeles, and we met towards the end of my term on the board and at the beginning of hers. And we struck up a friendship and dug each other. And right before I started playing, I got invited to go to Italy to play the blues in 2013. Was this whole thing kind of began by some old bandmates. And so right before I left to go there, I was thinking about picking up saxophone again, which I had played years ago, and thought I might want to pick it up again. And so my goal when I went to Italy was maybe I'll play 2 solos. I'll get my chops back enough to pull off 2 solos convincingly. And so I reached out to Mindi to see if she could give me a sax lesson. And so I went to her place and we were rapping, and she was, we realized we were going through kind of the same thing where I was being, drawn into this blues space, which I'd been a student of and had been around. I'd produced other blues things, both compilations and both some albums. And at the same time, she was trying to get away from that pop world that you spoke of into a more sort of rootsier world. She just began playing with the Bone Shakers and Sweet Pea Atkinson, and she was trying to figure out how to just sort of, she wanted to explore space and wanted to be taken seriously in that space. So, and I went to Italy. I came back, decided to ditch the saxophone, and said picked up the harmonica, and we kept in touch. And then when I had all these songs, I finally had her album with songs written. I thought, you know what? It'd be really cool to have her produce. And the calculation was sort of, I knew it was a risk in the sense that, there's a lot of, the blues community is very gracious, and the blues community is very supportive of one another. And I've never been in a musical community before that's been as supportive and sort of, keeps their own up is the blues one. But it's insular, and I think that there's a lot of, like any music community, there's a lot of preconceived notions about, who has sort of, the right to play this music, or who does it with authenticity or credibility or whatever. Right. And I knew that some would look at Mindi's name, if they knew who she was. I mean, some might not know who she is at all, but if they knew who she was, it would raise a little bit of suspicion, perhaps, with certain people. But I kind of liked that also, and I thought, it's like, it felt like we both had something to prove, and I knew that her heart and her soul and her vibe. And she's from fucking Jacksonville, Florida, and she's grown up around all this kinds of music. And it's funny, Abair is her last name, which is a respelling of Herbert, Herbair, and so all her roots are sort of Creole kind of people from.
Okay.
So she's got this music sort of in her, and she's just as branded herself in a certain way over the years and been in a certain scene, and that's so what people know her. But she's so much more than that. So I thought, the two of us are kind of improbable, and I kind of like the improbability aspect of it. And she can deliver. There's no doubt she can deliver. And it's funny, even going down the street, there's a lot of people that know about her. And she's this blonde, good-looking woman, and people are whatever. And she busts out her saxophone, and she is a monster. I mean, she's just a monster player. And she's trained at Berklee College of Music, and she's played with everyone under the sun, and she just has, above all else, incredible chops. And she wanted to support me, And so I thought it was a risk worth taking, that people would ultimately, give it a shot, put their sort of preconceived notions aside, and then realize, as it sounds like you have, like, oh wow, she's actually, there's something about her I didn't know. Just as like, even with me, I think I have a kind of non-traditional blues background, if there is such a thing, and I think that even you're reading my bio, part of me is like, oh God, I always worry a little bit about people, taking my intentions seriously and knowing how much this music means to me, despite the fact that I grew up in a sort of, in some respects, a non-traditional way that people might think, who am I to be a blues musician or whatever? But this music is, it's sort of, it's made me understand my past and my heritage and my lineage, and it's made me get in touch with, all the crap in my life, and it's made me also just want to celebrate in a way I've never been so, non-self-conscious about. So, anyway, it was a great marriage, and she's been a great ally for me and a great supporter, and it's also nice. I mean, I've always produced my own stuff, I've produced other people, and so just the act of asking someone else to produce me was a big deal. And it's a big deal to sort of like go into a studio and just be the singer and just be the harmonica player. And obviously, I say in these things, it's collaborative, but to not have to hold every detail on my shoulders really freed me up to be a different kind of singer and a different kind of player in the studio, which really comes across. And I've never, made a record like this, aside from the genre, just because I was allowed to just pour every bit of my soul into it, not worry about whether I was the one who had to say cut, or whether I was the one who had to listen for whether, the bass player missed it or not. That was someone else's job. And so I was, I was 100% in my own space. And I've never had that before in the studio, where I could just be 100% in my own space like that. It's a real gift that she gave me.
Well, the proof is in just cranking this thing up and listening to how amazing it sounds. So, it turned out absolutely fantastic. So we talked a little bit about switching gears from producing yourself, etc. What would you say, like a good? Now you've produced, and now you've worked with Mindi. What does a good producer really bring to the project?
One, they are providing a safe environment, for an artist to be their best self. Right? They're just providing a safe space, because making a record is it's a vulnerable kind of thing, and you need to feel safe, and you need to feel that you've got people on your back who are going to encourage you and pull the best out of you while keeping you encouraged. So I think that's first and foremost, and then the other part is to create a scenario where you're just sonically going to sound your best. So the right players, and the right studio, and the right engineer, and the right kind of setup. And then there's also this working. Mindi works with me on the material. I had some other songs where it's like, look, I don't think this is the right song for the record, and sort of being a bit of an editor, because a lot of times an artist, the best of them still, lose objectivity. They get caught up in the weeds, right? And so someone who's got the sort of the gravitas, and someone who the artist trusts enough to say, that's not it. That song's not the best song, or what if, you rearranged it to do this, or, it's funny, we had a solo on Luther Dickinson from the North Mississippi All-Stars. Originally played the solo on one of the songs in the album put together, and he played a killer solo, but it just didn't feel like part of the album, and I wanted to hold on to it because it's Luther Dickinson from the North Mississippi All-Stars. Oh my God, probably having my marketing hat on more than my music hat on.
Okay.
And there's Mindy's like, it's a great solo, but it just sounds like it belongs on like an Allman Brothers record, not a Reverend Shawn Amos record, And so to have that, that was kind of a tough conversation, but that's what a producer does. It's sort of, have tough conversations and sort of keeps the big picture in mind and helps to sort of, keep this thing on track and create a product or create an album that is, in keeping with what the artist wants, but hopefully even a better heightened version of that. I had this album in my head. This album would sound as good, without Mindi around. There's no way I could have sort of taken it as far on my own, as she did, because of just the nature of collaboration and the nature of partnership and the nature of just having also someone else who just, has, different sensibilities and sort of, chops to bring to the table.
How did you end up? Now, the Blind Boys of Alabama are on this record, right? Am I correct?
Yeah, they're on the first track.
Okay, how did you get involved with those guys? I mean, you're involved with everybody because you're in the music business, but talk about how they came into the project.
We have a lot of mutual friends in common, and I'd written that song "Days of Depression," which opens the album, and it's in some respects, sort of the most old school, song on the album. There's a Memphis Mini cover, from 1930s, so that's old school for sure. But in terms of the original, it's decidedly old school. It's almost like a Chain Gang, kind of song.
Right.
And it's and I just had always heard a sort of gospel thing on it, and we did a demo. We demoed all these songs in Los Angeles, which I self-produced the demos. And the demos were good. It's actually fun. If you need any proof of what a producer brings to the table, to hear any of my demos up against the final album, it's an interesting exercise. But I always heard a gospel thing, and on the demo I had sort of overdubbed my own gospel-y kind of vocals, like call and response kind of stuff. And so I knew I wanted it there. It was just who was it going to be, and I just and I heard what else is one of the old Real World albums up there. So I'm trying to title it. But I was like just listening to the car one day. I'm like, oh my God, Of course, them. and I just started calling a couple mutual friends how I could get to them, and I sent them the demo. And they I had an in because we had a mutual friend, so I was sort of like the way in. But I sent them the demo, and they said yes like the same day, which was a huge honor. And so and that was an overdub too. So we couldn't. They tour a lot, and we couldn't get our schedules to align. So we went to them. Actually, where were they? They're in New Hampshire on a tour stop. So we ran into a studio in New Hampshire and did that. But yeah, super grateful to them. I mean, that was a huge, just a huge win. And those guys there.
Yeah, no, it's a great marriage. It sounds fantastic. I wanted to take a wee bit of a step back. You mentioned a few times that you'd produced other blues artists and have been involved with different blues compilations, et cetera, but you'd never really done. You sort of came into blues a little bit later in your career. Could you tell us about how you got into blues? Being a blues singer.
Yeah. I mean, I discovered the blues as a fan, like towards later end of high school, beginning of college. I went to the Long Beach Blues Festival in California. It's a pretty well-known blues festival, and saw John Lee Hooker, and I sort of really got bitten by the music. And then I bought this guy Peter Guralnick, who's a great author. He's written a series of books on Elvis Presley, but he wrote a blues trilogy. Or trilogy on Black American music. Feel Like Going Home. Lost Highway, Feel Like Going Home, and Sweet Soul Music. It's a great trilogy about sort of tracing Black American music from early blues through 60s soul. And I read these books, and they just sort of educated me about my own history. I knew painfully little about my own history as a Black American male. And I grew up in a lot of white neighborhoods, and I went to white schools, and I had very little sort of I had very little around me that looked like me as a kid, as a young adult. And so these books, like, really introduced me to a part of my history that I just didn't know a lot about. And so it's through his books that I really got into the music. And so I went to NYU Film School, and I remember I bought all the Chess compilations, Real Folk Blues, and the Willie Dixon compilations, and Muddies, and bought box set. I just spent all my money on this stuff, and just listened to nothing but that music for most of my college career. And every time I had a break, whether it was a spring break or summer break, I get in the car and I drive down south. I drive to Memphis, I drive to Mississippi, I drive to New Orleans, I drive all these places that Peter was writing about in his books. I wanted to see them. And so I really, really became a deep student of this stuff, but didn't really gravitate towards playing it myself. When I started writing songs, for me, and this is, again, I guess, the battle of the marketing head versus the artist head, I felt like, that was the predictable thing to do at the time. I felt like I wanted to be contrarian or be ironic, and so a lot of the music that I wrote lyrically, I made a record called Harlem in 2000, and it was a very, very pointed, somewhat political record from very much a black perspective. It's sort of a concept record about a family living in the South and moving up to Harlem during the Harlem Renaissance. So it took all of my fascination about Black American history and Black culture and racial identity, and it was like this very heady thing. But musically, it was like kind of an Americana record. It had banjos on it, and it was kind of twangy. And so I was into this sort of like mashing up of heavy Black, maybe centric themes against non-Black music forms, I guess. And that was sort of like my thing. And in retrospect, I was probably way overthinking it. I was probably way too sort of like over just in my head more than my heart. But that's where I was at the time. And so I just never saw myself as a blues player, blues singer. I played harmonica, but I played harp like Bob Dylan played harmonica, or Dylan plays harmonica. But so then in 2013, and then I made this album, Thank You, Shirl-ee May, about my mother, a tribute to my mom. My mom was a singer, and she committed suicide in 2003. And so I made a record a couple years later, sort of as a tribute to her, and as a way to sort of like, grieve about her and reconcile that. And it was a really hard record to make, and it was a really, heavy record to listen to. And I think it sort of like did me in for a while. And so I just stopped making music for a long time. And then in 2013, a good buddy of mine, I was in the band with a long time ago, he called me up out of the blue and said, look, I'm going to Italy. I got some gigs over there. A guy who I know in Italy, promoter, really loves blues music, and he wants me to put a blues band together. And I think you should be our singer. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, and you know this music more than anyone else I know. Put whatever set list you want together, sing whatever you want to sing, and come on over. And that was it. And I'm like, wow, okay. And so I went over there and I put the set together of all these songs I'd always loved but never thought about singing. And we had these packed houses, and I tell people it was the lightning bulb moment for me, Lou. Where I just I was standing there and I felt all of this history coming through my body, and I felt like my mother, and I felt Solomon Burke, who I'd known forever, and who's a huge mentor to me, and I did albums with him. And I felt the artists who my father had worked with, over the years. I just felt all of my personal past and my racial past sort of come into me. And I tapped, and I was like becoming in real time like a different kind of singer, and a different kind of performer. And I was always a very kind of shoegazer kind of performer when I was doing my own sort of singer-songwriter stuff. And these crowds were looking at me, and they were just sort of seeing me as something other than what anyone had seen me before. Because to them, they didn't know who I was. They thought I was, they thought I was the Reverend Shawn Amos. And they're the ones who called me that. I mean, after the gig, you were like the Reverend Shawn Amos. And so they gave me that name. And so by the end of it, I was literally transformed. I mean, literally like, oh, my God, I found myself. I found my voice. I found my purpose. And I came back to the States. And I said, that's it. Like, why would I sing anything else? Why would I make any other kind of music? It's so simple. It's so less complicated than how I made it. And it's coming from a place of joy, which is so ironic because it's the blues. Everyone thinks about the blues as being the sad music, but it is like from a pure place of joy and triumph. I've sort of come through all the things I've come through and be at this place. And so I said, if I want to call myself a reverend, I got to really be a reverend. So I went to Universal Life Church, and I spent a year from before we made the EP. I just spent a year woodshedding. I booked a residency at a small little room in Los Angeles. They let me be there. And we played for 3 nights a week, 3 hours a night, so 9 hours a week for a year. And I didn't tell anybody. But this is again the artist marketing thing. I'm like, I'm not going to think about it. I'm going to tell anyone about this. I'm not going to market it. I'm not going to think about anything other than just learning how to do this, just learning how to honor this craft. And we just played over 100 shows without ever sort of making a record or telling anyone about it. And so by the time we made that EP, we had a year under our belt, and playing a lot of shows. And I felt like I'd really found my voice as a blues player, blues singer. And then here I am talking to you.
Well, you had this sort of you had what people call like an epiphany or a sort of come to Jesus moment, and where it sort of just all came together. This has been floating around in your life, and then you get asked to do this thing in Italy of all places.
I know.
Well, this wasn't Shreveport.
It's a long way from Italy to Shreveport.
Okay, so all right, so you have a lot, and I watched some other interviews and videos with you, and I think you have a lot to say about the state of blues. And so, can you talk a little bit about the blues scene today, and maybe what you would like to see happen, or how you feel about it?
Yeah. Look, I say this. I've written a bit about this, and I wrote a piece about I blog for Yahoo Music, and I wrote a piece on Stevie Ray Vaughan on the anniversary of his death, and I still get probably a couple comments a week from people about this thing I wrote that sort of some folks misread and became a little bit controversial. But I feel that I came into this sort of with the conventional wisdom that a lot of people have, which is, the blues is dying, right? And this music's on the verge of being in past tense, right? Maybe B.B. King died, and Eric Clapton's on Facebook saying this music's on the verge of being in the past tense. I heard Buddy Guy on NPR a few weeks ago talking about how he's worried about the future of this music. And so I was one to buy into that kind of wisdom. But I'm convinced now it's not about the blues dying as much as it is about the blues needing a brand refresh. I think that the blues, like I said earlier, this community is so amazing. It's blues community, but it's very insular. And I think that you've got these blues societies and blues foundations and all these sort of groups, these support groups that exist all over the country, all over the world. And right. People are dedicated to supporting one another in this radio stations and whatnot. But it's a small community, right? And so I think when you're in that community, you think there's no problem with the blues at all. Look how many people are playing the blues. Look how many people are taking it on. Look at these, people come out to the shows and support it, and there's blogs everywhere. But it is insular. If you take that community and sort of juxtapose it up against what's happening in the larger musical world, no one's thinking about the blues. Virtually no one is thinking about the blues. And the way they think about pop music or hip-hop music or country music or other genres of music. So I get that about why. I think if it's dying, it's because it doesn't occupy a large part of people's mind share. You can't go out into a club or in an elevator or turn on a radio commercial or TV commercial. You don't hear this music anymore. You just don't hear it unless you are part of that little circle and you seek it out. And I think for it to survive and thrive, the blues needs to come into places where it currently has not been invited. And I don't think it'll get invited into those places. And I don't think that people will think about, I don't think people will consider the blues as maybe a genre unless it sort of has something about it. I'm not talking about the music itself, but the way it's marketed and the way it's presented, something that feels current and on par with how other things are presented and marketed in this 21st day and age. And so I think that blues musicians and blues people in the blues community need to do a better job at how they communicate and talk and market themselves, and think about doing it and how they do it to the non-believers versus the believers. Because I think every conversation we have that takes place within the blues community is just sort of talking within a closed circle. And if I'm a person who lives in New York City, who's a Brooklyn hipster, who isn't thinking about blues at all, and I go to, the Blues Foundation website, or I go to any other kind of, sort of blues bars, look at the blues artist fan page, it doesn't look and feel like most music stuff looks and feels, and from a presentation standpoint. Does that make sense?
Right.
And so I think we got to, like, again, that artist marketing thing. I think there's a lot of blues artists out there, and I got some quibbling about, like I said earlier, I think, a lot of blues music has been associated with, like, guitar hero music, guitar slinger music, and that's, not entirely my thing. But I think the artistry of the blues, I think, is alive and well. I think the marketing of the blues needs a lot of help.
Do you see yourself as maybe a champion in that aspect of it, with given your background with everything else you've done? I mean, you seem to me you're obviously widely passionate about this. We're not going to get to talk about anything else today because I can tell you love it so much. But what I'm saying is you're so passionate about this, and you have a lot of great ideas, and you have this sort of like other background. Do you see yourself as maybe somebody, I don't mean to put you on the spot, who maybe could start to steer this thing towards, getting more mainstream acceptance or understanding?
If anyone, I'm happy to put myself of service to anyone who wants me to be of service. But I'm not, this is emotional territory, for
okay.
a lot of people. And so I'm not, I think that. I'm not here to, like, tell anyone how to do their business, but I have a strong opinion about it, and I think it comes from, being around a lot of different circles, a lot of different scenes, some music related and some non-music related, but all about how you sort of, create a market for something. And I think that, if people are serious about, the blues having a larger market share and are serious about the blues being more relevant to more people, and certainly at the base level, just the history of this stuff being passed along and history not being lost, then I think that we got to look at things a little differently. And I think I have a viewpoint, there's other viewpoints out there. I think we need some kind of coalition. Honestly, I think there's people from different sort of areas of this business, from the marketing side and the club owner side and the promoter side and the management side and the label side and certainly some key artists. But I think a number of influencers need to come together and sort of collectively agree that, A, there's a problem, and the problem isn't the music, but the marketing of the music, and all agree on how to sort of move forward in a coordinated way. I think that's possible. I'd love to be part of that conversation for sure. We'll get. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. Let's talk about kitchen table blues. Yeah. Now, what is Kitchen Table Blues? Tell everybody what that's all about. So every Sunday on YouTube, we post let me back up. So every Sunday on YouTube we post a performance of a song being played acoustically in my kitchen, and they're covers of old blues tunes I dig, and they're originals as well. And that video comes about because on Sundays I invite folks to my house and I make brunch and we hang out. And then we play some music. And it's something I started. I have this ritual where I go to the farmer's market in my neighborhood every Sunday. And so I'm a big farmer's market sort of fan, and I like cooking. And so, I always invite people over to the house for brunch and cook. And I love that sort of gathering. It's a lot about what I like about the blues and entertaining people, entertaining people through food, entertaining people, through music. And there was a period where I wasn't playing a lot outside of LA. I still don't play a lot outside of LA. It's really one of the big goals in the next coming months and certainly into next year is to get out on the road more and play in other places. But I was sort of faced with the question of, like, how do I bring people to the music if I can't get to them, on a regular basis? And I was getting tired of, Facebook posts that just said, here's a gig I'm playing in LA, and you can't get to it because you live in, Duluth. And so, so I was like, how can I just, post something that is going to be of value to people and can also share with them, what I'm about, and sort of create a little bit of a community until I'm able to get to them and create a physical community in the club. And so I thought, well, God, if we're having these brunches every Sunday anyway, and we're playing some music, let's just get a camera guy out there and film it. And so, and not anything thought out or produced. It's like one camera set up. There's no edits. You see my kids walking back and forth. You see my dog walking around. It is very lo-fi, and that's because I don't want it to be a thought out old deal. I just sort of and I think people sort of caught on to it. Particularly the last few weeks, something's happened. It's like sort of hit pay dirt. There's a song up there, Days of Depression from the album. We do a Kitchen Table Blues version of that. It's close to like 20,000 views on YouTube, and I'm getting lots of emails every day from folks who are just loving these things. And I think that a lot of what I get from folks is sort of the same thing we've been saying, is like people are just really psyched to have this strain of blues sort of be put in front of them again, because a lot of what they're seeing with blues is sort of maybe a little slicker, or it's very guitar, solo based, and they're psyched they're happy to sort of see this other side of blues, which they remember fondly, or maybe they didn't know as well before they dig it. So it's been a lot of fun. And my goal is hopefully we can sort of take them on the road and sort of do Kitchen Table Blues in other people's kitchens at some point. But for now, it's my kitchen.
Well, it's a really neat video series, very fascinating. And Shawn does not. You're not even singing into a microphone, right? You're just singing ambiently.
Nothing in mic. I think we plug in my guitar player's guitar, so we have a little bit of flexibility on that. And there's one mic overhead that's just out of the shot of the camera. Mm-hmm. And that's it. And we do a take, and whatever it is what it is. So.
That's great. Thanks for describing it, because I was going is this a studio set somewhere? It's actually your kitchen.
That's my kitchen. That's my kitchen.
Let's talk about authenticity. Very cool. So what is next? So the record's coming out here on the 16th?
October 16th comes out. We're going to do a couple of dates in New York, and then do some other media in New York on the week of release, and we're planning some fall dates throughout California. We may do a few dates in Texas, and then we'll see what happens after that. But I mean, the goal is, what's next is to get out on the road. I really, really, really want to get out on the road. And the show is where it comes alive, and I love the album. I think the album is somewhat representative of the show, but there's some live footage of me out there around, and everyone who's come to our show is just really is struck, and I think that. There's a lot of testifying going on, and there's a lot of all the sort of spirits that I felt in Italy. The only way I sort of get in touch with them on a regular basis is being on stage. So so we want to play as much as we can play, and hopefully we'll have a chance to do that as we get towards the end of this year and certainly into next year.
Well, I hope that you guys do get a good touring schedule going, because just as an aside here, Pittsburgh is a very big blues town, and
right
they would eat this up.
Well, we're coming. We're on our way, Pittsburgh.
It's good stuff. Okay, is there anything?
Hold on for us.
We are. Shawn, is there anything else you want to mention before we roll out of here? Do you want to plug anything else? You want to mention anything else?
You've been very generous, man. Thank you. I hope folks will, check out the album and get it on iTunes, and I hope that they'll check out the Kitchen Table Blues things. They're up every Sunday morning, 7 a.m. Pacific. We post those things every Sunday, and just I'm grateful for the forum, man. I'm grateful for you giving me some time.
So guys, you can check out, I'll just throw the links out there one more time at everybody. That is ShawnAmos.com or Facebook, Reverend Shawn Amos, and you can find him on Twitter, Shawn Amos. And then if you want to go to, probably the easiest thing to do for YouTube is just type in the search Shawn Amos, or just in the Kitchen Table Blues, because that's not going to be, there isn't going to be 20 other people in Kitchen Table Blues.
That's so far.
And it's something you guys have to see. You definitely want to check that out. It's really neat. So go on there, watch that, tell all your friends, and comment on it, because it's very cool. Shawn, thanks a lot, man. It was so good to talk to you.